welcome once again. Thank you for all persevering. We're just going to keep moving along here with the messages. So Suitcases for Africa had a very successful fundraiser last week, and thanks to all those who came out and supported them. There may be a small amount of frozen soup left. No, Wendy is shaking her head. Okay, forget that. Too bad for you guys who missed it. Also, there's a note regarding yoga. If it's feeling like you need to get back in shape with someone in person, Bryson is doing his yoga classes on Tuesday evenings for $10 or chair yoga on Friday afternoons for free. Moving beyond our own community, Haiti was badly damaged by an earthquake on August 14th, which was followed 2 days later by a severe tropical storm. The United Church of Canada is supporting our mission partners in badly damaged communities in Haiti, and if you'd like to make a donation, please go to the United Church of Canada website. There are lots of messages available in the midweek message on the church website, as well as a great list of online resources. So please let us all thank everyone for getting the glitches worked out. Enjoy the service.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you once again to all who have brought this service together, to Libby and Helen for working with us in leadership, for Michael with his leadership in music, Christine, Jim, and Jim once again for your several hours this week and other weeks of work in coordinating and connecting us within and beyond this shell of worship. As we come together in our worship today, with all of the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the various details of technology and lives, of schedules, of the realities in our world. And today we will be touching on a very difficult subject for many, the history and reality of the impact of residential schools. The United Church of Canada ran 16 residential schools across Canada, and the last residential school in Canada closed in 1996, and it was here in Quebec. As we begin our worship, we acknowledge the land that we are on. We acknowledge the lands our churches and many of our homes sit on have been stewarded by the first peoples of Turtle Island. Among them, the Ganaganahaga Mohawk peoples, as well as nations of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and neighboring Huon-Wendat, Anishinaabeg, and Abenaki peoples. We commit ourselves as a faithful community to the multi-generational work of reconciliation and the pursuit of true justice and flourishing well-being for all people who now call Canada home.
Good morning. I'm very honored to have been asked to read this story this morning. I was first introduced to it about 25 years ago when I was teaching Aboriginal community service workers at Concordia University. It is an ancient story from the Cherokee Nation. It is called The Wolf Within. An old grandfather, whose grandson came to him with anger at a schoolmate who had done him an injustice, said, "Let me tell you a story. I too at times have felt a great hate for those who have taken so much, with no sorrow for what they do. But hate wears you down and does not hurt your enemy. It is like taking poison and wishing your enemy would die. I have struggled with these feelings many times. The grandfather continued, "It is as if there were two wolves inside of me. One is good and does no harm. He is filled with joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. He lives in harmony with all around him and does not take offense when no offense was intended. He will only fight when it is right to do so and in the right way." But the other wolf, he is angry, envious, greedy, arrogant, guilty, self-pitying, resentful, inferior, does not tell the truth, has false pride and ego. He is full of anger. The littlest thing sets him into a fit of temper. He fights everyone all the time for no reason. He cannot think because his anger and hate are so great. It is hard to live with these two wolves inside of me, for both of them are trying to dominate my spirit. The boy looked intently at his grandfather, into his eyes, and asked, "But which one wins, grandfather? The evil one who is angry, envious, greedy, arrogant, resentful, doesn't tell the truth? Or the good one who is joyful, loving, serene, humble, empathetic, truthful, and faithful?" The grandfather solemnly said, "The one I feed."
At the center of our lives of faith is the love of God. At the center of our search for peace is the message of Jesus. At the forefront of our journey is the light of the Spirit. At the core of our community, at the center of our lives, the very anchor and grounding of our welcome. Embodied in flame, lived out in the world. By rivers and streams, on the water, alongside lakes and seaway, we gather together. Disciples of Christ, children of the Spirit, people of the Creator, sometimes with tears, sometimes with excitement, all the time, worshiping the one who calls us to be. While we try to live in God's way, we know how often we follow the wrong advice or walk down streets that turn us from one another, from God, from the world, and from ourselves. Yet God watches over us and calls us to confess, so we might be welcomed into the embracing arms of mercy and healing. Let us pray. We confess how much we are like those first disciples of Jesus. Wisdom from on high. Our cravings for more and more toss us about like leaves in the fall winds. We boast of our great wisdom, yet do not understand your ways of peace and gentleness. We do not plant ourselves in your hope and grace, and so reap harvests of disorder and conflict. Draw near to us, gracious God, and forgive us. Draw us into your tender arms and teach us peace, gentleness, the willingness to put the other first, the wisdom to serve instead of to seize, so we might bring forth a harvest of righteousness, justice, and peace in the name of your Son and our brother, Jesus. siblings in the human family, children of the divine, I bring you these words of assurance, this wisdom from above. God plants in us the forgiveness and healing that we need, so we might share the good harvest of joy and mercy with everyone we meet. Bathed in the living waters, fed by the bread of life, we are given new life and hope. Thanks be to God, we are forgiven. Amen. Let us join in our prayer of approach as we prepare to hear our word for today. We thank you, Creator, for the diversity, the complexity, and the interconnectedness of the world in which we live. We thank you for the mystery of it, the beauty and the bounty. In our quest to explore and understand it, keep us mindful of our place in your world as one of its creatures, one with possibility and responsibility. As we worship, draw us closer to your mystery and your majesty. Amen. I invite Libby Monaco to lead us in our readings this morning.
Our first reading this morning comes from the Epistle of James, chapter 5, verses 13 to 20. If you're having trouble, you should pray. And if you are feeling good, you should sing praises. If you are sick, ask the church leaders to come and pray for you. Ask them to put olive oil on you in the name of the Lord. If you have faith when you pray for sick people, they will get well. The Lord will heal them, and if they have sinned, he will forgive them. If you have sinned, you should tell each other what you have done. Then you can pray for one another and be healed. The prayer of an innocent person is powerful, and it can help a lot. Elijah was just as human as we are, and for 3.5 years his prayers kept the rain from falling. But when he did pray for rain, it fell from the skies and made the crops grow. My friends, if any followers have wandered away from the truth, you should try to lead them back. If you turn sinners from the wrong way, you will save them from death, and many of their sins will be forgiven. The gospel reading is from Mark, chapter 9, verses 38 to 50. John said, "Teacher, we see a man using your name to force demons out of the people. But he's not one of us, and we told him to stop." Jesus said to his disciples, "Don't stop him. No one works miracles in my way. No one who works miracles in my name will soon turn and say something bad about me. Anyone who isn't against me is for us. And anyone who gives you a cup of water in my name, just because you belong to me, will surely be rewarded. It will be terrible for people who cause even one of my little followers to sin. Those people would be better off thrown into the ocean with a heavy stone tied around their necks. So if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. You would be better off to go into life crippled than to have two hands and be thrown into the fires of hell that never go out. If your foot causes you to sin, chop it off. You would be better off to go into life lame than to have 2 feet and be thrown into hell. If your eye causes you to sin, get rid of it. You would be better off to go into God's kingdom with only one eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into hell. The worms there never die, and the fire never stops burning. Everyone must be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if it no longer tastes like salt, how can it be made salty again? Have salt among you and live in peace with each other. Here ends the reading of God's word.
I invite Helen Files to share with us another voice about Orange Shirt Day.
I'll admit that I was mostly unaware of the significance of Orange Shirt Day until this past summer when Jim and I went to visit our daughter in Haiti on the west coast of British Columbia. And there were orange shirts all over town, in the windows of houses, in the windows of businesses, and that string across the top there was in front of the school district office. So clearly Orange Shirt Day was very significant, and I needed to track down the story. And much of what I'm going to say comes from the Canadian Geographic article, and this will be reprinted in the next week's midweek message, I believe. So Orange Shirt Day begins in 1973. The story of Orange Shirt Day begins in 1973 when Phyllis Webstat was 6 years old. She was preparing to enter a residential school near Williams Lake, British Columbia. Phyllis is from a First Nations community, and at the time, she lived with her grandmother on Dog Creek Reserve. In preparation for her first day of school, her grandmother took her shopping for a new outfit. Phyllis carefully picked out an orange shirt that was both bright and exciting and reflected her feelings about going to a new school. But when she arrived at St. Joseph's Mission Residential School, her emotions quickly went from excitement to terror as her shirt was taken away from her, and she never saw it again. The shirt represented to her a piece of home, a piece of her heart, and life as she knew it. This would be the first of many traumas that she would experience during her year away from home. Fortunately, the following year, a school was established on Dog Creek Reserve, so Phyllis was able to return home and sleep safely in her bed again. Her mother and grandmother had not been so lucky. They each attended that residential school for 10 years. Parental visits were strictly forbidden, and they were only able to go home for 1 month each year. From 1831 to 1996, over 130 federally funded church-run residential schools were attended by more than 150,000 First Nation, Inuit, and Métis children. An estimated 6,000 children died at residential schools. The goal, as stated by Canada's first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, was to take the Indian out of the child, or forced assimilation. It was a cultural genocide that has reverberated through generations of Indigenous peoples through intergenerational trauma. Stories stolen, stories lost, stories too horrific to tell. So how did the story of an orange t-shirt turn into Orange Shirt Day? Well, fast forward from 1973 to 2013, when Phyllis Webstat was brainstorming with a friend about what she was going to say at a media announcement for the St. Joseph's Mission Residential School Commemoration Project the next morning. She was feeling not up to the task. She was an unemployed Indigenous woman, and she was going to be surrounded by chiefs and community leaders. But she had been asked to speak at this week-long series of events across the country that coincided with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's efforts to begin to right the wrongs of residential schools. And she suddenly had an idea. I know what I can talk about, she said. I can talk about my first day at school when Granny got me the shirt. Phyllis's friend, Joan Sorley, the first person ever to hear the story, was also on the Commemoration Project Planning Committee. She says, "We were generating some momentum here about the horrors of residential school, and Phyllis's story is so simple and yet powerful, and it's pretty much everybody's story. You know, everybody, meaning residential school survivors, lost their clothes on that first day of school." Sorley says she was trying to figure out how we can keep the momentum going and thought, well, there's Pink Shirt Day to take a stand against bullying. Why don't we have Orange Shirt Day? And that was how Orange Shirt Day came to be. And in Phyllis Webstat's words, "We chose September because that's when kids went back to school. That's when they were taken away. I felt divinely guided. In that fall, when I went to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission event in Vancouver, I was sitting there listening to the truths being told, and an elder sitting not far from me was talking, and she said that September was crying month because that's when the kids went back to school. I knew then that we had chosen the right day. We chose the slogan, "Every Child Matters," because I felt I didn't matter when I was in residential school. No matter how much I cried, nobody cared. Nobody. We weren't hugged, we weren't consoled. We could be half dead and we weren't tended to. Every child that went to residential school, they all matter. Even the ones that didn't come home, they matter. And it wasn't until after we were using that slogan that I realized that it fits the past, the present, and the future. It fits reconciliation. It's one of those divine things that fits in this day of reconciliation. So on September 30th, wear an orange shirt to honor the children who survived the Indian residential schools and to remember those who didn't.
Thank you, Helen. I ask that you join me in prayer. May the words that are about to be shared and the meditations of all our hearts lead to actions that awaken your dream for us, living God. Great Spirit, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. It is almost a cliched statement that it is not as important how we fall down, but how we get back up. We stumble together and we rise up together. It is not easy to be a follower of Christ, a subscriber to the path of Jesus of Nazareth, a Christian disciple, a Christie, as we were called in the first few centuries, a Jesus follower, a Christian, however you want to call us. The way is fulfilling and rewarding as one that upholds integrity and the satisfaction of doing the right thing. But it is a fairly narrow path, full of joy, but also full of self-governance and concern for others. As we heard last week, if we want to be the first in the kingdom of God, truly ones who can lay claim to authentically following the way to awaken the divine dream for us, then the Spirit's path for us is to make ourselves servants to all others, to love and serve others, giving voice to the voiceless and upholding the downtrodden, telling truth to power. Today we hear that we must speak these truths, even if we ourselves are the ones with the power. A challenge, to be sure, with the reward of authentically living with respect in all creation, a world of love and justice for all. When none fear being left behind, because all are loved, all are considered, all are needed. Jesus reminds us today in our readings that God works in us and others by the Spirit, meaning that those working for love and justice in the world are not only those who call themselves the disciples of Jesus. The gospel uses parables and metaphor, and in today's reading, hyperbole, to share the lessons that Jesus tried to teach us about integrity, justice, and love. It is not meant to be taken literally. We're not meant to be lopping off hands and feet and plucking out our eyes, quite literally, but with the intention of catching our attention and emphasizing how important it is. He exaggerated the statement about removing from ourselves all that holds us back from loving and serving others, and is emphasized so that the point is made about how important it is and how much more serious can it be. A call to love and serve others in the face of thousands of unmarked graves of children who will never go home because we stumbled as a church, as a faith, thinking that only those who follow the path we follow are on the right path. So we are called to be serious in our commitment to the point that we will remove from our lives anything that keeps us from living faithful lives of kindness, of justice and integrity, even if it is something that we hold dear. This complemented by the passage from James that very clearly directs us to be honest with ourselves and with others. When we turned from God, when we turned from one another, from ourselves or the world, to, as the word is used, repent, which literally means to change direction, to turn to another way. And the good news we find in the sacred presence within humanity that was found in Jesus, that which is within and beyond each and every one of us, matter. This good news becomes that we are not alone in this, that we can turn from ways that are self-righteous or hurtful to ourselves and others or the planet with the support of one another to work together, seeking and receiving forgiveness and reconciling with each other as well as with the divine and the planet, that it is not too late, that we can turn to our brothers and sisters, our siblings that have no gender identity or multiple gender identities. And as we reflect on Orange Shirt Day, we can acknowledge that we, in the past, turned from seeing the divine presence in our neighbors who have lived in harmony and respect in creation, neighbors who can teach us of healing, forgiveness, and share ancient wisdom as our siblings in the human family, learning from one another in our journey as a united church, as Christians, as people of faith, as neighbors, as loving family in humanity. We have lived the experience of stumbling with those of other faiths and the planet, and we can now live the experience of rising up together in healing and love. This video that was shared by many peoples across Canada reflects not only on how we have stumbled, but how we can rise up, how we can reconcile in faithful living together as one people of Turtle Island.
In August 1986, during the 31st General Council of the United Church of Canada at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario, a teepee was erected by First Nations delegates. Elder Alberta Billy, representing the All Native Circle Conference, courageously called the church to account for its complicity in the suffering of the people it claimed to love. On that night, after typical United Church discussion and voting, moderator, the Right Reverend Robert Smith, sat with elders and offered words of apology on our behalf for the ways the church had contributed to the dismantling of a sacred spiritual path and the destruction of Indigenous culture. Another apology followed 12 years later, specifically for complicity in the suffering inflicted by the residential school system. As we know, apology is hollow without a conscious repairing of relationship. So to that end, the apology was received, but not accepted as complete. This cairn was built to remember the historic act and, more importantly, the commitment to reconciliation. 35 years in, we ask, how is our walk from apology to action progressing? Let's recall those historic words that light our way.
To do for you a welcome song. This song was taught to us by Maggie Paul, who is a Passamaquoddy. It was given Anishinaabe words by the late Sarah Ganawabi, who is a longtime member of our group. We are singing it to you today to welcome you to this special event. Hey, babe, in again. Hey, babe, in again. Hey, babe, in again. Shemmy Quitch, Kabashayan, Kabashayan. Hey, Kabashayan.
Long before my people journeyed to this land, your people were here. And you received from your elders an understanding of creation and of the mystery that surrounds us that was deep and rich and to be treasured. We did not hear you when you shared your vision. In our zeal to tell you of the good news of Jesus Christ, we were closed to the value of your spirituality. We confused Western ways and culture with the depth and breadth and length and height of the gospel of Christ. We imposed our civilization as a condition of accepting the gospel. We tried to make you be like us, and in so doing, we helped to destroy the vision that made you what you were. As a result, you and we are poorer. And the image of the Creator in us is twisted, blurred, and we are not what we are meant to be by God. We ask you to forgive us and to walk together with us in the Spirit of Christ so that our peoples may be blessed and God's creation healed. The apology was acknowledged and received with grace to be considered by the Indigenous Church before making a response.
In 1988, at the 32nd General Council, the Indigenous Church acknowledged the apology, expressing its hope that the church would live into its words. Mrs. Edith Memnook, a representative of the All-Native Circle Conference, said, "The apology made to the Native people of Canada by the United Church of Canada in Sudbury in August 1986 has been a very important step forward. It is heartening to see that the United Church of Canada is a forerunner in making this apology to Native people. The All Native Circle Conference has now acknowledged your apology. Our people have continued to affirm the teachings of the Native way of life. Our spiritual teachings and values have taught us to uphold the sacred fire, to be guardians of Mother Earth, and strive to maintain harmony and peaceful coexistence with all peoples. We only ask of you to respect our sacred fire, the creation, and to live in peaceful coexistence with us. We recognize the hurts and feelings will continue amongst our people, but through partnership and walking hand in hand, the Indian spirit will eventually heal. Through our love, understanding, and sincerity, the brotherhood and sisterhood of unity, strength, and respect can be achieved. The Native people of the All Native Circle Conference hope and pray that the apology is not symbolic, but that these are the words of action and sincerity. We appreciate the freedom for culture and religious expression. In the new spirit this apology has created, let us unite our hearts and minds in the wholeness of life that the Great Spirit has given us. This exchange has been at the center of our work to make right this broken relationship, to bring about healing and new life, so that both parties can walk together and with God in a good way. Maxine McVeigh has been a leader for us in that endeavor, in Sudbury and beyond. She was here that night and shares the impact it has had on her life.
I had the privilege of being at that 1986 General Council meeting, and I will never forget when Alberta Bailey stood up and she shared her story and called on the United Church to apologize, including for our role in residential schools. I was deeply moved by her story and the pain and anguish she experienced being taken from her family, her language, and her culture. I was horrified. My church that I loved had been part of an institution that had taken small children from their homes, denying them their language and their culture, leaving many parents and grandparents and whole communities sad and mourning. The experience of the church's apology has flamed my passion to work for right relations, reconciliation, and healing, and justice for all people. I've been involved with the Right Relations Committee now for about 25 years, first with Manitou Conference initially, and now as part of the team for the Right Relations Resource Team for the Canadian Shield region. One of our goals over the years has been to provide education for our faith communities. Many of our faith communities are now acknowledging what First Nations territory their faith community is worshiping on. And another resource is a Minute for Right Relations to promote understanding of our First Nations culture. I've always been grateful to Art Solomon and his helper Peter for the many hours of the labor and the laughter and the time spent building this memorial cairn. And that experience flames my love for my Indigenous brothers and sisters and continues to call me to continue that journey, to find ways to walk together, to respect one another, listen and learn with and from one another. Over the years, our denomination has taken steps on our journey with our First Nations brothers and sisters, but we still have a long path ahead of us. Lisa Blair will now share some concrete actions that you may want to take both as individuals and communities of faith to help put the words of the apology into action. Miigwech.
My name is Lisa Blay, and I'm a member of the Right Relations Resource Team and the Faith Formation and Outreach Minister at Trinity United Church in North Bay. I'm a Haudenosaunee woman living and working in North Bay, a city that is nestled between Lake Nipissing and Trout Lake, on lands and near waters that have sustained many Indigenous peoples from time immemorial to the present. Anishinaabe, Cree, Algonquin, Ojibwe, Métis, and in recent history, settler peoples from many different nations have called the areas in and around the Apology Cairn home. As people of the Apology, we seek to live together in peace and friendship, honoring the treaties, seeking justice, and walking together in the spirit of reconciliation. I've been asked to reflect on how we, as people of faith and people of the Apology, can put those historic words of apology into action. Here are my top 5. Number 1, seek out and celebrate the historic and current contributions of Indigenous peoples in your region. Artists, storytellers, knowledge keepers, athletes, leaders, and other notable people. Number 2, listen and respond to the challenges that Indigenous people both on and off reserve are experiencing in your region. Number 3, decolonize your relationship with Indigenous peoples. That means recognizing and valuing the knowledge and experience that Indigenous people have. Number 4, become an ally and an advocate. Use your voice to uplift some of the challenges that Indigenous peoples are facing. Language, culture, land, health, all needs to be restored, both independent of and with the support of non-Indigenous people. Number 5, we have already been given the framework for justice and reconciliation. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Urge our government to uphold and implement UNDRIP into law. Nyawa, Miigwech, merci, thank you. Now to inspire our journey, we welcome the very Reverend Jordan Cantwell.
As a result, you and we are poorer, and the image of the Creator in us is twisted, blurred, and we are not what we are meant by God to be. This is why the work of reparations and right relationship building is essential. It is part of our healing journey, healing for settler peoples as well as Indigenous peoples. If I don't understand my own need for healing from my bondage to colonial and white supremacist attitudes, then even my best efforts at reconciliation will likely perpetuate and entrench colonial ways, not dismantle them. I must come to terms with the ways in which the image of the Creator has become twisted and blurred in me, how my participation in racist and colonial structures distorts my own humanity, as well as that of my Indigenous relatives. Once I see this truth clearly and feel its impact on my relationship with God, myself, and my neighbors, then I will be fully invested in the transformation that needs to happen in me, in our church, and in society. Then I won't run from the hard and humbling work of building right relations, because I'll know that this is the medicine I need to heal, to become whole. This is about my liberation and your liberation, the liberation of each and every one of us, which is all bound up together. May we have the courage and the humility to embrace our healing journey, that together we may be liberated to become what we are meant by God to be.
This is like the first time in a long time that two-spirited people specifically are being celebrated, and I'm so amazed by it and I'm so grateful for it.
Today we are at Revitalizing the Circle, Saskatoon's first Two-Spirit powwow, and the origin of this particular powwow has actually come out of a number of years of community, I should say grassroots building.
At a regular powwow, like many things in society, the dancing is gendered. Girls will dance, or women will dance, and men will dance, or boys will dance. But Two-Spirit powwow has no boundaries around gender, whether they identify as female, male, gender diverse, trans, non-gendered, they're free to dance wherever they feel most comfortable.
That's where the term Two-Spirit came from, was acknowledging the fact that we have always been a very accepting people, we've always been a very loving people, and we've always been a people who have had a rich understanding of gender and sexual diversity.
I hope that this catches on and that this becomes a part of the powwow circuits as we honor our Two-Spirit people, because our people have been here since time immemorial, and we've always believed in 5 genders as opposed to the binary colonial genders.
1987, I was ordained by the United Church of Canada. This year I conducted my first Two-Spirited wedding. It really gave me pride and peace within myself to see they're finally recognized and honored and respected.
We do care about the Two-Spirit community, and that we do have some friends and family that are Two-Spirit, and we're here to show our support.
When the opportunity to work with United Church Canada came up, people were really excited to acknowledge the United Church's work around reconciliation.
We do have residential school survivors who are here at this powwow, who have come up and have stated these deep understandings of acceptance, and it just warms my heart to think that those connections are being made, those bridges are being rebuilt, and we're really revitalizing the circle to bring the Two-Spirit teachings back to Indigenous communities.
This isn't just a sponsorship, this is coming together to do something that actually will have long-lasting impact in terms of building better relations.
With the Healing Fund, what we find is that this is a fantastic opportunity for us to build bridges with organizations, with institutions, and with United Church to ensure that we are building good relationships going forward. We are acknowledging the histories that have happened, yes. We are acknowledging the realities that are happening right now, yes, but we're also wanting to look at the future and recognize that we can make it better.
As we move forward in our ways of reconciliation and healing, the Healing Fund is one of many ways that we as a people of faith can continue this intergenerational work. As we reflect on ways that we can offer our work and our time and our commitment to this important and ongoing work of faithful living, let us reflect on our musical offering.
It takes a village to raise a child is an African proverb that means entire community of people must provide for and interact positively with children for those children to experience growth in a safe and healthy environment. Children learn through the stories that share the values of a community, teach expectations, and the belief that good actions will lead to a beautiful life. Dreams are fragile. The opportunity of nurturing and appreciating the dreams of children affirms their spirit. Sharing and listening to dreams brings hope into our lives. Happiness can be shared in many ways, but mostly by example. A happy environment goes a long way toward nurturing a self-fulfilled person. Singing and dancing bring joy to the soul. Despite the loving care of a community, all children go through highs and lows. Some children suffer deeply from anxiety and other mental illnesses. In his collection of 13 childhood memories, Schulman shared his reflections on his own sufferings as a child. This music helps us acknowledge that life is not always easy for children. In the face of a child's troubles, we look to the voice of wisdom. Wisdom that is all around us, from ancient holy sources parents, teachers, friends. This is the village. This last piece is called The Poet Speaks.
Let us join in our prayers of joy and concern. Let us find a prayerful place. Great and heavenly Spirit, God of compassion, healing, and comfort, we lift up in prayer the sacred lives of the children, some now known to us, all known to you, who died in residential schools. We lift up in prayer the sacred lives of the children who went missing from these schools and whose fates are unknown to those who held them most dear. We grieve the loss of so many thousands of these little ones, and we grieve especially their loss so far away from home. We grieve the loss of youth with so much potential. These were children of this place, children of our land. The loss of their giftedness is our collective loss. We lament how long their families have had to live with unanswered questions. Hear our prayers. For those who were not informed of their children's deaths at all, or on a timely basis. For those who were not told of where their daughters and sons had been buried. For those who have long hoped that a child who went missing somehow survived and had a good life, even as they may have also feared the worst. We lament of our complicity in the loss of these children. As members of a church which ran residential schools, we seek your help as we look to redress the many ways in which our church failed these Indigenous children, their families, and their communities. We pray that your reconciling love will teach us how to create true bonds of community and understanding as Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples today. We lift up with gratitude the efforts of all those who are seeking to honor the lives of the children who died, as well as the children whose fates are unknown, through ongoing research and acts of remembrance. We ask for your continued guidance of them as they work to uncover the stories of the lost. We understand how precious this information is and how vital it is to the healing of so many families and communities. Bless those who are preparing to honor the children with sacred ceremonies and those who work to protect burial sites in keeping with traditions of Indigenous peoples across the land. We pray for the families of these children and for all who love them. Envelop them in the warmth of your infinite care and give them peace. Inspire all of us with energy, wisdom, and commitment to the loving pursuit of the truth, which will heal all of us in our brokenness and lead to reconciliation with our neighbors across this beautiful land. We lift in prayers in our hearts, our own personal prayers of joy and concern. As we lift our prayers for those across this land in places near and far, we lift also our prayers for those of this faith family. We lift our care and concern for Phyllis and family, for Sarah and Tim, for Anne-Marie, for Heather, and for Mike. We lift our prayers for those who grieve, for our healthcare and frontline workers and their families. We ask that you continue to be with us as we strive to live with respect in creation, knowing that it is the future of all of your children. Each week, as one regional council, we of Naganhaga Regional Council together lift up our prayers for a different pastoral charge. This week, we lift especially Bedford Pastoral Charge. May their work and ministry and life of faith continue to be a blessing to this world, bringing light and hope, life and joy to all they encounter as we work together to serve and love others. In you, God in community, Holy One in all, we have found all we need and long for, and we offer the prayer, the Jesus prayer for today. O source of life, connectedness beyond simple perception, we hold our experience of you as sacred. May we choose to live the good you call for in our actions as well as our imaginings. Nourish our bodies and spirits, inspiring us to share the abundance that we have. Challenge us to show understanding and love for others, as we need to be understood and loved. Help us overcome our shortcomings to be our best selves through the faith that you always show in us. May we all make it so. Amen. And as we go from this time of worship together, let us find healing in the love and promise of the word. Find hope in the joy and togetherness of community. And find commitment and uplifting in our work of truth and reconciliation. Go now in peace. Allez dans la paix du Seigneur. Skenengoa. Amen.
We'd like to finish this service with a little game for you to play, something that may bring you back to your childhood days. We're going to play some songs that you may have sung at Sunday school, and you have to guess what these songs are. So a little quiz. Okay, how many people guessed the 5 songs? Y'all did, I'm sure. Number 1 was, of course, Jesus Loves Me. Number 2, that's it, God Sees the Little Sparrows Fall. Number 3, this is God's Wondrous World. Number 4, Mothers of Salem. And the last one, All Things Bright and Beautiful. How many people guessed all 5 somewhere on the way? No? Okay.
Of course, Michael.
My big thanks to Mr. King, father of Peggy Hammond, who was our Sunday school superintendent. He had a big chart with all these songs on them. And at Boerpaar Elementary School, where United Church was before the church building was built, we got to sing all these wonderful songs.